Is this thing on? Caw-caw! 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 All right, we're good. How's everybody doing out there today? I'm Nate Sallie. It's good to be back with you. I just want to share, man, I've got dry mouth. You guys ever had dry mouth? I've got this dry mouth. I think it might be the air. Maybe from Canada. Which is actually what I want to talk to you about today. This cold, crisp air from Canada, but it kind of leaves you a little dry. And I took a trip there not too long ago, and I've been asked multiple times by numerous people, family and friends alike, to tell this story. And it's only right that I share it with you. But I don't know if you've ever watched the Arena Football League. But can you really call it football? Kurt Warner came from the Arena League, and that was a success story. He was an NFL MVP. But it just seems like something's missing. Like, there's an ingredient that's missing. Kind of like the Arena Football League is to the NFL, kind of like a chocolate chip cookie without chocolate chips. Or a pumpkin pie without pumpkin. It's just missing a little something. It's just not quite right. Something's just a little bit off. And I can't put my finger on it. But I just have this intuition, as Jules says. How about Vince Carter? He played for the Toronto Raptors. He was an amazing, amazing college athlete and basketball player. He played for North Carolina, the Tar Heels, and Dean Smith. But for some reason, when he crossed that border and went from the American side of Niagara Falls to the Canadian side, he lost a little bit of his juice. You know what I'm saying? Almost like Air Canada was deflated. But, hey, that's not for me to figure out, is it? But I can tell you about a trip that I took to Canada recently with my band. And I was asked to come up to play an outdoor festival. So we flew up, me and 3 guys that were in my band, amazing players, amazing men of God. And we went up to play this outdoor festival in Ottawa. Could have been Quebec. I think they speak French in Quebec, which is another interesting thing about Canada. They speak 2 languages. They speak both French and they speak English. Now, let me ask you something. If your neighbor spoke French and you spoke English, how in the world could you communicate? Maybe pictures. Maybe just pointing. Maybe just grunting like, So that's basically maybe what it boils down to. When there's a disconnect, when you can't communicate with your neighbor because you speak 2 completely different languages, basically it goes back to the cavemen days. Back to the prehistoric days when people just grunted at each other. And they said, if they said, you know what, I'm going to cut my lawn today. It looks like my neighbor needs to cut his lawn. I'm going to go tell him about it. He would just go over and go, and hopefully he would think he was talking about mowing his lawn and not cutting his kid's hair. But there you go. That's just something I observed while I was there. But that's not really the story I want to tell you this afternoon, or this evening, or this morning, or wherever you're listening and watching this VCast in your VCast society and world. It's global. It's global. So we took a trip up there. We flew up to play this outdoor festival, big festival. We were doing the sound check. I was actually on the platform doing the sound check, and I thought to myself, man, what an awesome and amazing, crisp and clean day. It was a fall day. And I remember that we had booked the Embassy Suites for that afternoon and evening. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to the Embassy Suites, but it's no Super 8. It's no Motel 6. It's not a Ramada that hasn't been remodeled since 1987. This is the Embassy Suites, I tell you. Now, the Embassy Suites is actually worth selling as much as you can on eBay, just so you can spend the weekend there. I mean, pull some old books, pull some old shoes out of the closet, some old clothes, go sell them on eBay, and spend a weekend at the Embassy Suites. It's an amazing place, amazing beds, amazing staff, amazing service. And I thought to myself, after this sound check this afternoon, I did not have to be back for the concert for about 4 or 5 hours until this evening. So, as I was reminiscing and reminding myself of just the lavish and luxurious accommodations we had in Canada that afternoon, I walked off the platform. But to my surprise, the promoter walked up and said, listen, cancel your reservations because we've got something even more lavish and luxurious. We've got a Canadian bed and breakfast. So I thought to myself, a Canadian bed and breakfast. Embassy Suites, bed and breakfast. Embassy Suites, bed and breakfast. Embassy Suites, bed and breakfast. Now let me tell you something. Bed and breakfast, what I think of a bed and breakfast, nice stone cottage. Embassy Suites, sterile environment. Bed and breakfast, a nice old grandmotherly lady with gray, blue hair, maybe in her mid-60s. Embassy Suites, a couple staff people behind a desk with a computer. My choice and decision was made. I said, cancel the reservations. So they canceled the reservations, and we were headed in a 15-passenger van to the bed and breakfast. And let me tell you something, I was waxing nostalgic in that 15-passenger van. Although there's only 5 of us in the 15-passenger van, it doesn't matter, because it's always a 15-passenger van, whether we have 1 person, whether you have 2 people, whether you have 3 people. Now, let me tell you, the automobile manufacturers out there need to start making it more specific for their customers. Baskin-Robbins has 32 flavors. So I'm just going to put a call out there. You need a 6-passenger van, a 2-passenger van with no back seat, a cargo van with lawn chairs in case you need seating in the back, 7-passenger van, 8-passenger van, 9-passenger van. Whatever the customer needs, you need to provide. But that's beside the point. So we were driving. We drove past a couple Tim Hortons. And let me tell you something. Tim Hortons is the worst donut place I've ever been to. But it doesn't matter because I don't live in Canada. I don't have to worry about it. But Dunkin' Donuts, on the other hand, is on the other end of the spectrum. Dunkin' Donuts, I love Dunkin' Donuts. I love their coffee. And America runs on Dunkin' Donuts. I run on Dunkin' Donuts. I don't run very long because it's full of sugar and carbohydrates and starch. But I do run. So we were going by the Tim Hortons. Now as I was thinking about this bed and breakfast, the stone cottage with a crackling fireplace and a little old lady there with chocolate chip cookies and hot chocolate and hot apple cider to greet us at the door, we pulled into an everyday neighborhood. A neighborhood that kind of looks like the neighborhood that I live in. A great neighborhood, but a single family, single dwelling, 2-story homes, side by side by side, maybe 150 to 175 units. And we pulled in and I thought to myself, 2 things. Number 1, maybe the promoter forgot some information, some details that he needed to pick up on the way to the bed and breakfast. Or number 2, maybe this is the pathway through this neighborhood to the bed and breakfast, the stone cottage with a nice little pond and lake in the back. Maybe we're just going through the neighborhood to get to the bed and breakfast. But to my chagrin, that was not to be the case. Here's what the case was. We pulled in, whipped into a driveway, an everyday driveway of a single dwelling home, a single family home, and I kid you not, there was a post in the front that looked like it had recently been put there with a little sign, and on that sign in Sharpie was written, "Just like home, bed and breakfast." Now, I don't know if it's obvious to you, but it was pretty obvious to me that just that morning somebody had got a call from this inside this home, and they said, "Hey, can you make it look like your home's a bed and breakfast? Because we've got some band members that we have kind of conned into saying this is a bed and breakfast." So he ran out that morning. He went to Canada Mart, Canadian Mart, Wally World, whatever it is. They put a stick in the front yard. They put a little sign with a Sharpie that said, "Just like home." Now let me tell you something. That was actually very true. Because it was just like home. It was just like my home. And that was the problem. This was supposed to be a bed and breakfast. But you know what? I took faith's perspective as I got out of the 15-passenger van. And as I walked up to that front door, I said, you know what? God does not look on the exterior of a man, and neither will I. I took faith's perspective and I thought to myself, maybe the exterior of this home is not a representation of the interior. But as I knocked on the door, I was rudely awakened by a man, not a gray-haired old lady in her 60s, blue-haired, with warm chocolate chip cookies right from the oven, hot chocolate and hot apple cider to greet me there at the door. No, as I knocked on the door, and I was the first to knock on the door, unfortunately, the door whipped open, and there was a disheveled-looking man, Canadian man, looked like a former Mountie, had crumbs all over his shirt, huge belly, huge beer belly, hadn't shaven for months, looked like he had just rolled out of his synthetic leather recliner, watching the Arena Football League. He grunted. He didn't even say hi. There was no cookies. I'll tell you what greeted me, a shirt. And on that shirt, the shirt that this man was wearing, our host, by the way, of the Canadian Bed and Breakfast, it said, "World's Best Father." But the word father was crossed out. And in its stead, it said, "World's Best Farter." World's Best Farter. Now, I don't appreciate that word, nor do I enjoy saying that word, but I've got to speak the truth. I've got to tell you the truth, and I've got to tell you the truth in love, because I want to spare you from ever having to endure the just like home Canadian bed and breakfast. So we walked in, and I thought to myself, well, maybe, just maybe, upstairs, the lavish accommodations will be unbelievable. But it was decked out in 80s decor. Now let me tell you something. It was like a scene out of 1984. And if it had in fact been 1984, this place would have been so sweet. But it was 1984. It was the new millennium. I could have driven up in my Trans Am, my Camaro, my Firebird with my Michael Jackson shirt, my high tops, my Reebok pumps, my Jerry curl, all these kind of things. But it's the new millennium. This is 1984. We drove up in the 15-passenger van. We went upstairs. He showed me to my room where there was a king-size bed with a huge ravine, like a half pipe in the middle, almost like he had just rolled out with his sweaty, hairy back, which left a little residue on that little ravine, that half pipe. But for some unbeknownst reason to me, I think by divine intervention, I was able to lay down and go immediately to sleep and take a nap. The windows were up. It was a nice crisp day. There's a black and white TV, no color TV, because things are not as they appear. They're just not exactly right when you cross the border. Black and white TV, a little stool over here in the bed, the windows was up. Now there's 4 feet in between the homes, 4 feet. You can actually touch the home next door. And as I was in the middle of my sleep, I was rudely awakened, actually startled. I popped up in my bed and I saw a shadow go outside of the window by the door, and it sounded like caw-caw, caw-caw, caw-caw. It was a Canadian condor. I've never seen anything like it. There was a small pointy tail, and it looked like a mountie was riding on top of it with a bit and a bridle through the mouth of this tragic, terrifying pterodactyl, which I like to call the Canadian condor. Caw-caw, caw-caw, caw-caw. And it flew by, it startled me. I ran out of the door. I ran out to the little platform that overlooked the breakfast area of downstairs in the Just Like Home Bed and Breakfast. And all the other guys in my band had been startled and woken up rudely as well. And they ran out, and I said, "Did you see the Canadian condor?" And they said, "We sure did. And we've never seen anything like it." So let me just tell you something. I want to spare you from the injustice of ever having to partake of. Listen, spare your children. Protect them. Honor your father and your mother by never sending them on a trip to the Just Like Home Bed and Breakfast, where they will take in world's best farter.